Hola, this is Kathleen Evans, International Living's Costa Rica correspondent. Thank you, muchas gracias, for joining me today on our video series. We're going to be talking about budgets for Costa Rica, for living here. So, budgets are kind of all over the map. And it's almost a controversial subject because I've interviewed dozens of expats here, and some of them live on as little as $1,200 a month per couple. And when I talk about that, I have expats saying that's impossible, you can't live on that here. But then I may interview someone who lives on $3,000, $3,400 or more a month, and people say, oh gosh, it's become so expensive. I can't believe you need that kind of money. Well, both numbers are accurate, and it really depends on the lifestyle that you choose here, the kind of retirement income that you have, and the location you choose to live. So I have a lot of people who ask me, well, living in the Central Valley or in the big city of San Jose is probably going to be a lot more expensive, so maybe I should live in the beach communities. And typically the bigger cities do tend to cost a little bit more for living, but in the case of Costa Rica, that's not actually true. There is more demand from retirees for the beach areas, and you'll find that housing is somewhat limited because they're very small communities that dot the beaches, and supplies that initially come into San Jose then are transported out to the beaches. So you're actually going to find more choices in the Central Valley and in the San Jose area. So that's something you want to consider. Now the first thing that's going to cost you the most likely, is your housing. Okay, and for examples, I'm going to be using a 2-bedroom, 2-bath home or condominium as kind of our gold standard. Okay, so rents can typically, again, they vary very much depending on where you live. Could be on the lower end for $700, and on the high end, $1,500 or even higher. Now these are places that have all the North American style amenities. So you have air conditioning, you have a washer, often you have a dryer, you have a dishwasher, you have hot water. Can you live for less in rent? Absolutely, it's very possible, and a lot of people do. But we're using kind of this 2-bedroom North American style example for when I'm talking about this. Now these rents are often negotiable somewhat, especially in a place that has more supply than demand. So keep that in mind, and you might even be able to negotiate your utilities into it. Okay, so that's a possibility for bringing the next part of your budget down. Now also talking about buying a 2-bedroom, 2-bath North American style home or condo, again, varies greatly. You can find some nice places for as low as $70,000, possibly even less depending on where you are, on up to $400,000 or into the millions if you're looking at a penthouse over the ocean. Okay, so again, big variety just like any place in the world. So now if you do buy something versus rent, your monthly budget is probably going to be a bit less because you paid that big money up front to make the purchase. So you're not going to have a monthly rent payment per se. However, you do need to budget if there is a homeowners association. So condos have them, many of the developments have them too. So you want to consider that in your budget, as well as property taxes. There is a new property tax that we're going to be experiencing next year. So you're going to have to factor that into your budget as well. The next thing you need to budget for is utilities. So as far as utilities, it's kind of fair to say for an average, maybe around $150 a month for everything. That includes electricity, water, gas is typically propane gas here, your internet, your cable, if you choose to have a landline, your cell phones, that sort of thing. So that's the kind of budget you would be looking at on average in the Central Valley, where the temperatures are more moderate. Now, I interviewed a lovely couple in Gracia, which is outside of San Jose in the Central Valley, up in the mountains, Lou and Lorraine, and they tell me that their electric bill averages just $22 a month. Okay, so that's your big expense, or it could be your very small expense, depending on where you live. Now, if you're living on the beaches in Costa Rica, know that your electricity is going to be much more expensive. In fact, if you're looking at all of your utilities bill, it could be as much as $500, depending on how much you run your air conditioning. So that's another thing to consider. Now, the next thing on your budget is healthcare. No matter what age you are, healthcare is going to be a concern, and especially as you're into your senior years of retirement, okay? So there is a national healthcare program called the CAHA, and everybody who is a resident, a legal resident, will pay into that program. Now, typically it runs 7 to 11% of your reported income. So let me give you an example of how that would look. If your Social Security payment is $1,500, and that is the money that you claim for the couple, then at 7%, you would be paying $105 per month for the couple, okay? And that is all of your health care. It doesn't, there's no age discrimination. There's no pre-existing conditions that aren't covered. They all are. Now remember, this is a low-end number, so it actually could end up being quite a bit more. Okay, now there are other options for healthcare if you're not yet a resident or you're only here part-time. There is private insurance available. We have insurance agents who sell private insurance, and these are very familiar names like Blue Cross and Blue Shield, Aetna, those kind of names are all available here with packages. Of course, those are going to vary greatly too, primarily based on age, pre-existing conditions that won't be covered, and what deductible you choose. So there's really a lot of variation on your private insurance. My husband and I each have a private policy, and our monthly payments are approximately $400 a month, and we're in our 50s. Okay, so you can figure that obviously is going to increase with age. Now there's also a program called MetaSmart, and that is $15 a month per person, and that buys you into a group discount for area hospitals, doctors, clinics, and procedures. Okay, so you could receive a procedure that might be up to 80% discount as you bought into this group plan. However, you have to go to their approved hospitals and doctors. Now, a lot of expats like to self-insure, okay? So if you're relatively young or very healthy, you can just pay out of pocket as you need wellness care or if something happens. So you do have a lot of variables here. The magic number I use for healthcare is $400 a month. So that's something to bear in mind as you're budgeting, but know that it can be a lot less as well. Now, obviously, you have to budget for groceries. We've seen some increases in pricing of late, and that's something you definitely want to consider. So my magic number here is budget for $500 a month for food. Okay, obviously it can be a lot less. This also includes wine and beer, if you enjoy that from time to time. But one of the ways you can keep your costs down is to learn to shop like a local. Very easy to do here in Costa Rica. So instead of going to the sparkly North American grocery chain, you can go to the local feria or the market. We have those all over the country. We've covered that in some of our other Costa Rica videos. And there you can buy all of your fresh produce, vegetables, your fruits that are locally grown, coffee, which is grown here. We have beautiful seafood, especially if you live in the coastal areas. You can just find where the local fishermen set up and buy local seafood fresh off the boat that day. So it's important to know there are ways to cut your budget smaller and not be dead set on all of the North American favorites that you know and love. For example, peanut butter or certain cheeses. These are all imported goods and they come with tariffs. So that's one thing to bear in mind when you're looking at your food budget. Now, also you're going to want to budget for entertainment, dining out, and hobbies. So obviously, you don't want to just sit in a rocking chair when you come to Costa Rica. You might want to take up a new hobby. Well, hobbies cost a little bit of money, depending on if you're golfing or if you're learning to paint. There's supplies you have to buy, equipment you need to buy. So I would estimate this budget at about $400 a month, which gives the two of you about $100 a week to work with. Obviously, you're going to want to dine out from time to time, and this is where dining like a local comes in as well. So we have these smaller family-owned local restaurants called sodas, and you'll find them everywhere in the country, from the big cities to the teeny towns. And you can get a very hearty meal for two with a beer for as little as $20, and sometimes even less depending on where you are. Now, if you want to go to a tourist restaurant, well, that's going to cost North American prices. Don't be surprised if you might spend $70 or more, depending on if you order a bottle of wine. So, entertainment, dining, hobbies, about $400. Now, next on the budget is a car or some sort of transportation. Now, I have $150 a month budgeted for car upkeep. However, that means you have to buy the car. So obviously, there's going to be an expense with buying a car. Now, know that cars are expensive here, okay? Typically, you're going to see them priced about 30% higher than the Kelly Blue Book value that's used in the United States. So sometimes people have a little sticker shock when they're shopping for cars here. You can bring your car from home, but there's also expenses involved in shipping and registration here in the country too. So those are some things that you have to weigh regarding cars. Now, your upkeep of your car, it depends. If you buy a newer model, obviously you're going to have less expense in repairs, but know that gasoline is expensive here as well. So it's about $4 a gallon right now, and that can add up if you do a lot of driving in the country. Most expats don't, but some do. So we suggest, if the car is not an option, in certain communities, you don't really need a car. You can walk, you can rent a golf cart or buy a golf cart, or quad or a motorcycle. So these are some transportation options for you. I interviewed a lovely couple, Howard and Judy in Escazú, and they don't own a car, but it's kind of a car community. And they have budgeted $150 a month for Uber. And they get all of their entertainment done, they get their shopping done, they just use Uber. So that's an option too, but know that that's really just around the greater San Jose area. Most of the rest of the country, Uber's a bit unreliable depending on where you are. So that's an option. Some people do a combination of these, and if they do need a car for a road trip or something, they'll rent it for a week. So there are car rental agencies all over the country since it's a very touristy country. Another option is to take the bus. And I've talked to some wonderful people who take the bus all the time. And the beautiful thing about Costa Rica is the buses go nearly everywhere. And they're inexpensive, they're reliable, and for seniors, they're free. So you can ride the bus for free. So you might want to think of living somewhere close to a bus line, and then that's going to bring your transportation costs down significantly. So that's another way to save money here. Now, you may or may not want to budget for a maid. So maids are, any of the service industry folks are very inexpensive in Costa Rica. Depending on where you live, how big your place is, all of the things that you want done, maid can vary per month from $60 to $100. Now, a lovely couple I know, Tom and Diane in Gracia, told me that their maid buys and cooks all of their meals for the week for $60. So that'll really cut down on your dining out costs if you made an arrangement with your maid to do something like that. They also have a gardener, and a lot of folks with homes do. And gardeners are very inexpensive as well. They have their gardener comes twice a month, and they pay him $50 monthly. So pretty incredible, especially when you see these lush landscapes and all of the things you need to keep up with in this beautiful country. So the last thing I have on the budget is an incidentals fund. And let's face it, life throws you surprises. Perhaps your air conditioner broke down, or you need a car repair, or you had an unexpected health expense and you're self-insured. So there are lots of things that happen, and it's always good to have that incidental fund. I estimate about $100 to $200 a month, depending on what you have to work with. And it's not something you necessarily have to do every month, but it's good to put a little away for that rainy day. In fact, you might see the rain behind me right now. So there's also fees and taxes that come up if you own a corporation here, which many expats have an inactive corporation that holds their home or their automobile or something of value. There are corporate taxes that you have to pay each year. And if you're planning on going through the residency process, there are some costs involved with that, and attorney's fees and that sort of thing. There's also a new VAT tax that has just come up, and that is not only on goods, but now it's on services too. So your hairdresser, your lawyer, all of those folks are going to be charging a VAT tax as well. So always good to have that little extra cushion of incidental money. Now, as I had mentioned, I've interviewed dozens of expats that live all over this beautiful country, and truly the budget is all over. So I know a couple of expats here in Tamarindo, which is one of the most expensive beach communities in the entire country, and they both live for a budget under $1,000 a month. give or take, depending on the month. So it can be done, but you're going to give up some of the lifestyle you might be used to. You might have a smaller home, a very modest home. You may not have hot water. You may only have air conditioning in the bedroom or bedrooms. You may not own a computer. You won't own a car. So it's possible to do it, but that's definitely on the low end. Lou and Lorraine, who live in Gracia, keep their budget under $2,000 a month. So that's very impressive. Dave and Marcia, friends of mine in Santa Ana, say it's pretty easy to live on $2,500 to $3,000 a month once you've paid for the big costs of a car or a home up front. And then there's Bill and Margaret in Atenas. They live a very wonderful lifestyle. They maintain a gorgeous home in the mountains, and they have the type of lifestyle and retirement that allows them to live on $6,000 or over a month. So you can see in Costa Rica, it's all over the board. I conducted a focus group the last time I was in Santa Ana and talked to 6 different couples who are expats here from both the United States and Canada. And they would say the magic number to live here is $2,500 a month or more. So I would go with, you want a comfortable lifestyle and not giving up any of the amenities, I would say $2,500 is very safe. However, know that it can easily be done for less. So that's kind of our wrap up of budgeting to live in Costa Rica as an expat. I want to thank you for joining me today. Please subscribe to our YouTube International Living channel. You can see our entire video series from all of the countries that we cover. And I thank you. Muchas gracias and pura vida from Costa Rica.